Greetings, salutations, respect and love. I am Scott, and you, my dear, dear friends, have wandered into the Prog Corner, where today on the channel we are going to be talking about one of the great misunderstood and underappreciated albums in the prog canon. And yeah, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you know what we're talking about today. We're talking about Genesis, and then there were three. Their ninth album, it came out March 31st, 1978. And this was the first album since 1970's Trespass, without the talents of the great Steve Hackett on guitar. When I bought this thing, I was really disappointed. I'm a big Steve Hackett fan, and I had just moved onto a boat, and Genesis was doing great with Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering were both really, really solid albums. And then Steve Hackett leaves, and then we get this. I was so disappointed that he was gone. My first Genesis show was 1978 in Milwaukee. I saw them on this tour, and they were amazing, but the lack of Steve Hackett really hurt my feelings quite a bit. Daryl Strummer did a nice job. He wasn't the first choice. Apparently, they had been recommended a guy named Alfonso Johnson from Weather Report as a possible touring guitar player to replace the great Steve Hackett. But he was more of a bass player, and Rutherford wanted to play more guitar now that Steve was out of the band. So he wanted a real guitar player, and they ended up with Daryl Strummer on the tour with Chester Thompson on drums. But the album that we're talking about is just the three of them. And then there were three. This was the first album where Genesis started to really let their hair down and say, you know, maybe we can do shorter songs. Maybe without Hackett in the band, we can, you know, do an album with 11 songs and 11 different flavors. They were looking to, you know, really get their songs more concise. And this is right before Phil Collins' career, his solo career took off. So there's actually a really nice sampling of all three guys' songwriting. It's not particularly Phil Collins heavy here, I don't think. But it was recorded in the Netherlands. David Henschel was along to produce. The band gets co-producing credits on here. This was the third of four albums Henschel produced for the band. And so it has a sound that's very, very similar to Wind and Wuthering. It's actually recorded in the same studio as Wind and Wuthering, Relight in the Netherlands. When the album came out, it did fairly well. It got to number 3 in the UK and number 14 in the US. Follow You, Follow Me was their first hit in the US. It got to number 23. It actually did better in the UK, where it peaked at number 7. But for the US market, it was absolutely critical to have a song on the radio. The guys in the band talk about how after this album came out, they actually saw some girls in the audience for the first time, which was a new thing for them. And they knew they were really onto something. Whereas the predecessor, Wind and Wuthering, relied on old school Genesis, the prog epics, the long songs. Here we're going for something a little bit different, even though the sound is similar. But, you know, the guys sound fairly confident, even though they just lost the great Steve Hackett and they really didn't know exactly what direction they were going. They sound a little more confident on their next album, Duke, where you could really feel that that energy and that excitement level was really up. They knew they were onto something there. With this album, I don't think the boys in the band had any idea what their future was going to look like. Phil's marriage was on the rocks by this point. Tony and Mike were married, so you know the idea of battling the music industry to try to make a buck wasn't as appealing as it was when they were in their younger days in their early 20s. Now they got a family to feed, so they're thinking about hit songs. They're thinking about, you know, being a little bit more commercial. And you know, at first blush, the album is obviously not as good as Wind and Wuthering. But as I went through these songs when I did my Genesis ranking, I began to realize that I was dead wrong about this album. It's actually really, really good. And it starts with Down and Out, which is a fantastic band written song. It's in 5/4. It's written from the perspective of a recording artist in the verses, and then the chorus, I guess, is the record label executives talking back at him. When I first heard the song, I thought it was about Steve Hackett and his departure, but I guess it's more about, the music business in general. That little drum fill that Phil Collins does is so tricky and so cool. It sounds really bizarre. It's only 5/4, but with that little trip at the end, I guess Chester Thompson had some difficulty learning how to play that when they did it live. I thought he did a great job. The next song up is Undertow. This is a beautiful Tony Banks song with a gorgeous melody. And this is the first time that you hear this new thing in the Genesis album where this chorus comes up from nowhere and is huge and it's brilliant and it's beautiful and bright. And all throughout this album, the choruses are so sing-songy and so catchy. And this is the first instance of that. I guess Tony had a longer version of this song, which made it onto his first solo album, A Curious Feeling. Really, really, really great. It's followed up by Ballad of Big, which is a song I did not like. This was my first problem with the album in 1978. I don't think I threw the cassette overboard. I don't think it landed at the bottom of the ocean. I liked it good enough, the first couple songs at least. But then starting with the Ballad of Big, I was losing interest, but I was wrong. It's a great song. I really, really like it. Snowbound is another one of those songs. This is a Mike Rutherford song, but it's got that ginormous chorus. I mean, where did these guys come up with these choruses? They never had anything like this in their previous albums, so it was really cool to hear. Side 1 ends with Burning Rope, and this was the one song that Tony Banks actually considered expanding into a One for the Vine type epic. I'm really glad he did not. I don't think the individual parts are strong enough to sustain and really be foundation for a big epic, but where it's at, its running time, it's absolutely perfect. Side 2 starts great with Deep in the Motherlode. I think they opened with that song when I saw them in 78. Just a terrific song. Side 2 gets bogged down a little bit. Some of the shorter songs aren't quite as good. Many Too Many is actually a really good song. Great little chord progression. I enjoy it a lot. Next up is Scenes from a Night's Dream, and that one I did not like, and I'm still kind of not loving. I think this is really the only major contributions that Phil Collins made to the songwriting here. This was kind of his thing. I'm not loving it. It's all right. Next up is Say It's All Right, Joe. Another song I did not love at first. Over the years, I've really learned to enjoy it. I especially like the middle section where it gets a little rocking. The Lady Lies is the penultimate song. Another song I really didn't appreciate back in the day, but I was wrong. It's really good. It's kind of squiggly and bizarre. It's bizarre. I like it. And then the album ends with the hit Follow You, Follow Me, which is credited to the band at large, but I really believe that this is primarily a Michael Rutherford number, with some contribution from the other two guys in the band, but this has got Mike Rutherford written all over it. It was their first hit in the US. For a lot of people, it was their first taste of Genesis, and, you could find a whole lot worse songs to build a career on than Follow You, Follow Me, but they actually went on to bigger and better things commercially in short order. Phil's solo career, like I said, had not taken off yet, but very, very soon Genesis would be a household name. And this is the album that actually started them on that path to superstardom. So I hated it for a long time as a result. I was salty about it. I didn't like it. I didn't really like to see any band that I like change directions and shift gears, go into a different lane. But that's exactly what they were doing. And it took me years and years and years to really appreciate it. I think I liked Duke a little bit better when it came out. Maybe I was getting used to that sound a little bit, but And Then There Were Three is actually a fantastic album. Yeah, it's not as progressive as Foxtrot or Selling England by the Pound, but it's actually got moments of greatness all the way through it. I challenge you to listen to this album from start to finish and tell me that you're not enjoying what Mike, Tony, and Phil were putting out there, because I know it's a lie. I know you like it. I love it. I love Genesis. Yeah, I just did my Genesis ranking. But yeah, this was the album that really stood out to me as being one that I really didn't give credit where credit was due. This album is phenomenal. If it came out today by an unknown band, I'd probably be giving it 5 headphones. It's really, really that good. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about how wrong I was about that album. And upon further review, And Then There Were Three is dynamite, people. But you know that. You're on the prog corner. You're here with me. You've heard the album a million times, and I'm thinking maybe you have a similar experience with it. Let me know. Anyway, I am Scott from the prog corner, and I will see you freaks later.